Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Castival, and this is a very special episode indeed. This is part 2 of a live special with John Robbins, and on top of that it's a season 4 finale. Thank you so much for joining us for this awesome time. It's been a real treat to have you here. We are halfway through an interview with John Robbins. We absolutely recommend you try out episode 39 first. It's very, very important for you to do that so you understand the context of this episode. And why wouldn't you want to? It's absolutely hilarious. In the previous episode, John talked about his festival in the woods. He has ongoing pizza ovens, a litany of litter police, and many, many awesome bands. He's taken us through his Friday. But without further ado, let's go and investigate the Saturday and Sunday of Mr. John Robbins. So I think let's head straight over. Let's get a lovely night's sleep, but remember not to litter as we head to the Saturday, and I believe it's Alt Folk Day. Is that, if I'm correct?
Yeah, Saturday's sort of broadly alt folk. So in order that my fiancée doesn't detest coming to this festival, because I'm going to make her come, I've picked one of her favourite bands, who I also really like, and they are a band I've only come to quite recently called The Lone Bellow. We saw them in London in this tiny church, and it's really, really difficult going to see bands you've never heard of, because you inevitably sort of don't immediately latch on, but straight away they just came out and did this a cappella song, walking through the crowd, getting everyone sort of clapping in time and foot stomping, and I can only really describe it as like sing-song country. It's like really sing-along country with a guitarist, a drummer, and another one. But I mean, they were just sort of like sort of double bass type. Yeah. Almost like a skiffly aesthetic with sort of rockabilly, skiffly country, but they've got an album called Then Came the Morning, and a song called Marietta, which is just superb.
So this is kind of a band to kind of like I don't want to say bribery, but it's to make it a far more. It's a feasible experience for your partner to kind of enjoy the festival as well.
They would also be the perfect choice for like the first afternoon band, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
And as the sun passes over the Yardarm, after them is Bonnie Prince Billy.
Yes. Now, Bonnie Prince Billy is someone I've researched before this as well, and prior. And wow, what an eye-opening artist as well. I hadn't known much of them beforehand. But
really?
Yeah. Well,
what did you listen to out of interest?
So I listened to I See the Darkness album, and is it Ease Down the Road as well?
Yes,
and that was they were really, again, very emotive albums, and there was a lot to kind of digest. And I'll be honest, I listened to them yesterday and today, so I hasn't processed yet. But the face value of it, it's really you can see why you like that as well. And
well, I See a Darkness, the album is so bleak. Mm-hmm. It's so bleak. But then I See a Darkness, the song, is actually very hopeful, and people may know it from the Johnny Cash cover from the American recordings, which Bonnie Prince Billy features on. Mm-hmm. So he does the backing vocals in that. But I was introduced to Bonnie Prince Billy in around 1999. So between I See a Darkness and Ease Down the Road. And he's without doubt my favourite musician, really, that's sort of been alive in my lifetime. And as someone's pointing out in the chat...
Yes.
He didn't used to record as Bonnie Prince Billy. There have been quite a few different names. Mm-hmm. Started out as Palace Brothers, and then Palace Music. Interestingly, they re-released his back catalogue, changing most of the names to Bonnie Prince Billy. Mm-hmm. So I think Joya was released as Will Oldham. That's his real name, but that's been changed to Bonnie Prince Billy. And Arise Therefore, which I think was Palace Music, I'm not sure, but Arise Therefore is now, I think, Bonnie Prince Billy. But his most recent albums haven't been as good as up until there was an album called Lie Down in the Light, which I think was his last superb album. He has a weird habit of re-recording his own music in sparser and sparser arrangements, which I quite like. He released one album about 5 years ago just on a cassette that you couldn't buy.
Yeah.
But I was very excited to learn today that he's released a new album with Matt Sweeney. So they released an album called Super Wolf in the 2000s, and they've just released a sort of sequel called Super Wolves.
Yeah.
But then every so often he'll re-record his music in the most sort of mind-bending way. So there was a thing he released called Now Here's My Plan as an EP, and it's sort of 5 of his songs, and it's just some of the best music he's ever made.
Yeah.
I've seen him live 15 times. And I'm always just left completely speechless by him. And what I really like is he writes really good. He writes really well for female voices in his songs. So he often has a female singer sort of as a counterpoint. So a lot of his songs are almost like discussions between lovers. Good examples would be there's a song called You Want That Picture, which is about sort of a post-breakup of a woman saying to a guy, you want that picture of me, don't you? Sort of mourning you, but that ain't going to happen. It's really nice. And he did an album called with Trembling Bells called The Marble Downs, which is absolutely superb. But the lyrics to that are written by Alex Nilsson, I think.
Wow. And so you said you've seen him 15 times. What was, I know you said every time was incredibly special, but was there any one standout moment or one particular thing which really, one thing you loved above all of us?
I'll never forget the first time I saw him do I See a Darkness live. I just burst into tears.
Oh, bless you.
That was at the Kentish Town Forum, I think. I will never forget seeing him in the Colston Hall with my friend Robin, and he played a song we both love, which I think is called just Untitled. And it was me sat next to Robin's then partner, and then Robin was on her other side. But we panicked when the song came on because we love it so much that we just held hands over her.
Oh, that's really sweet. Oh, that's nice.
I saw him at, I think it's called St John the Baptist. It's a folk centre near Camden. And there was about 100 people there, and it was just him and a guitar. And he said, any requests? And he played my request.
Yeah.
And I was just in bits. Oh, man.
Yeah. And, well, this is...
I've walked past him twice. In fact, I've walked past him 3 times. Yeah. I got a photo of me with him.
And how did you react when you met him in real life?
He jogged past me at Green Man Festival in very tight shorts, so that doesn't count as a meeting. I saw him when I went to see him with Trembling Bells in Bristol, and he walked past me and I said, "Hi Will, I'm really looking forward to the gig." And the other time, I don't know, I've just got a photo of me with him, and I don't know how it came about, but I'm just glad it's there.
Do you kind of act do you kind of get a bit of a fanboy, or are you quite reserved?
I think it's beyond that. I think I honestly, if I was offered the chance to interview him, I would seriously have to consider how I was going to keep it together.
Yeah, and
I would really struggle not to cry, I think, if I was in conversation with him.
Yeah. Well, bless you. And well, talking about that, and I really want to kind of hone in on this because I think it's a similar theme of all the music you picked, and I feel that there's throughout all of it, there's a very intense emotional connection to every single part of the music. Do you think for yourself, in part of your music taste, is it important to have an emotional connection to the music?
Yeah, I mean, I think music for me is time travel. And, there are songs I don't listen... Like, if I listen to Troublesome Houses by Bonnie Prince Billy, I am immediately walking down the road from my old flat in Bristol to Stokes Croft to go to the pub with my friend Robin. And there's a specific road that any time I listen to a song off of that album, which is called Wonder Show of the World, I'm just on that road. So combine music and alcohol, another form of time travel, and you're in real trouble.
I absolutely agree. I know you mentioned it earlier with like going down Cowgate, listening to that specific music, and yeah, it's like especially Edinburgh Fringe as well when you there's certain music tracks facilitate a certain year as well. Like I remember I went up in 2018 and I would listen to Modest Mouse quite a lot, and they're one of my favorite bands ever. And but I remember walking up hills listening to a certain song, and every time I listened to that, right back there, and it's so evocative that, and the response to that is fundamental, and I absolutely see what you're saying there as well.
So next up, I've also got a slight fantasy that Bonnie Prince Billy will stick around on the stage, because I can't imagine that he hasn't crossed paths with the next artist, but I've never been able to find anything of either of them mentioning each other, but they're in a very similar realm. So I'm hoping that they get chatting backstage and release 10 albums together. So the next act is Neko Case.
Hello and welcome, Neko Case. Absolutely, I'm a massive fan of Neko Case, and I was very, very happy to have her on your festival as well. So tell us about, how would you describe Neko Case?
How would you describe Neko Case? Just the best voice I think I've ever heard on anything. And it's like Americana, I guess. Her ability to describe places and scenes is quite extraordinary. She's got an enormous power in her voice, but her lyrics are such a sort of such a strong, muscular version of womanhood, which I think is so inspiring. I mean, far too many lyrics to quote, but the consistency of her output is phenomenal. She's like got country roots, definitely, like almost like country and western influences. She's got such an incredible turn of phrase. She's got a song called Middle Cyclone off an album of the same name.
Yes.
And she there's a line where she says, "Can't scrape together quite enough to ride the bus to the outskirts of the fact that I need love."
Yeah, absolutely.
Fuck me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I found a quote from yourself, and I'm not sure how the etiquette of this is, but I thought it was just very apt, but also a very interesting. I can say very apt description of Neko Case, which is, you said, "I think of her as a sort of woman who'd walk into a dive bar and beat a trucker at an arm wrestle." And I think that is, you hear that and you do get that power is there as well.
Yeah, her box set is called, I think it's called something like Truck Driver Gladiator Mule.
Yes.
She's really into animals, and on her Instagram she's always posting pictures of her horses and her dogs and her cats, and she's sort of got an incredible way of writing about the natural world. One of my favourite songs of hers is called Maybe Sparrow, about a dead sparrow. So she's got this sort of fragility and tenderness, but just this incredible power. And there's a video of two girls from a music college doing a song to raise money, and they sing a song of hers called Star Witness in a stairwell. And I must have watched that video 50 times, and every time it makes me cry, because there's these two girls, one of whom is quite shy and she's sort of fiddling with her fingers, and the other one's playing a ukulele, but they're singing this favourite song of mine with such power. And I so loved that they had Neko Case as a role model. And she's replied to 3 of my tweets. Yeah.
She's replied to 6 of Tinky's, so I'm sorry to
got them screen grabbed. I also got a fist bump emoji from she did an album with K.D. Lang and Laura Veers called Case Lang Veers, and K.D. Lang gave me a fist bump when I said how great the album was as well.
just before we wrap up the rest of Saturday as well, James asks, would you also have the New Pornographers? Because she does lots of great projects as well, and New Pornographers is absolutely one of them. Would they be part of the lineup?
No, they're not, because it was too tempting to kind of load every act with loads of associated acts, and it would have sort of become mayhem. I do love the New Pornographers. Mm-hmm. I've sort of got out of touch with them, and part of the reason is I have a weird habit when I really, really, really like a musician of like saving some albums so I don't run out. So I think that I've got 2 New Pornographers albums that I really listen to a lot, and I'm saving the rest to sort of discover.
Yeah.
Because Neko Case is not, she doesn't put out a huge amount of stuff. I think her recording studio burned down, and she had writer's block. But her most recent album is called Hell On, mm-hmm. and it's got a superb song called The Curse of the I-5 Corridor.
Yeah.
But the one before that, The Worse Things Get, The Harder I Fight, The More I Love You. What mm-hmm. a title for an album. That's amazing, but it was like quite a weight for that album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sadly we have to move on from the Neko Case, but let's see who you got for the rest of your Saturday.
Well, next, the Reverend Al Green.
Oh, hello, yes.
To bring a bit of godliness to proceedings. Playing mainly from Al Green Explores Your Mind, one of my favourite albums, one of my favourite album titles.
Yes.
Just the most incredible voice. And he's a bit more jolly in places. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a bit more of a sort of party atmosphere. And then that baton is passed to Van Morrison, who is the penultimate act on day 2.
Very interesting. And have you ever seen Van Morrison live?
I've seen Van Morrison live twice.
And I've heard, I'm going to say, mixed reviews of him
two of the worst experiences of my musical existence. I mean, just... I mean, I forgive him. I forgive him. I could go and see him live 100 times, and each time it could be as bad. He just played crap 12-bar blues standards. Mm-hmm. The second time I saw him was on the Astral Weeks tour, mm-hmm. which is my favourite album of all time, and he didn't play a single song of Astral Weeks.
Are you joking?
No, I got my money back. I wrote and complained and got my money back. I was so angry. And it's such a classic Van move. Yeah. And also, not only didn't play anything off Astral Weeks, he played 2 great early songs. Mm-hmm. He played Streets of Arklow, mm-hmm. and I was like, why is he playing Streets of Arklow but not playing Astral Weeks? It was such a perverse and mean and cruel thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I had the choice of seeing him in London, Bristol or Cardiff. Mm-hmm. And I saw him in Cardiff. If I'd seen him in London or Bristol, he'd have played Astral Weeks, but for some reason on that day he couldn't be asked. I've heard nothing but bad things about him. Yeah. I love collecting Van Morrison stories because he sounds like a complete arsehole. Yeah. His COVID... have you heard his COVID songs?
Yeah, it's like No More Lockdown. It's
so bad.
It's kind of like, oh no, Grandad, what are you doing, mate? Like,
But he made not just the greatest album of all time, Objective Fact, but his first 7 albums are completely flawless up until 74. Mm-hmm. Then he had a great 80s up until 1990. One of my favourite Van Morrison albums is Enlightenment from 1990. He sort of then loses his way in the late 2000s and 2010s, just getting obsessed with playing the same blues, 12-bar blues again and again and again and again, mm-hmm. and sort of. But what can you say? He wrote the best album ever made.
So with your festival, and you're allowed to have any stipulations, is he going to play Astral Weeks in its entirety, or is it free reign?
He's playing He can play a selection of anything up until 1975. So that's Astral Weeks, Moondance, mm-hmm. His Band and Street Choir, Veed Fleece. Mm-hmm. What else? St. Dominic's Preview. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of those albums. I mean, it's a horrible hypothetical, but if he had died at 27, like a lot of rock stars did, mm-hmm. he would be, without doubt, seen as one of the greatest musicians of all time. I mean, a lot of people think he is. He's just sort of sullied himself for the last 10 years.
And who's going to because Van Morrison's a big act to have as penultimate. Who is your
Well,
headliner?
we've got another bit of crossover here, so he's going to stick around on stage and welcome on stage the band and Bob Dylan.
Wow. Okay. So
So they toured together. The band are one of my favourite artists of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Dylan, playing with them is always a highlight. They did a tour together, which resulted in the album Before the Flood, which is so good.
Yeah.
And they played like half Bob Dylan songs and half band songs. And the Last Waltz. So Van Morrison at the Last Waltz is kind of like Queen at Live Aid.
Yes.
He's the one who really nails it. But if you've ever seen the Last Waltz, then the prospect of Van, Bob Dylan and the band all kicking around on stage. And I think that might make him up his game a bit if he knew that Levin Helm and Robbie and Bob and Garth were waiting in the wings and Richard Emanuel. So we've got to do quite a lot of bringing back from the dead, unfortunately, with the band. But yeah, so I'd have the band and Bob Dylan from the sort of Before the Flood era tour.
Yeah, and that sounds very magical. And I love how you're getting the only way to get Van Morrison to step up his game, instead of doing it for the lovely fans, it's do it by you're getting like other colleagues to peer review him. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Totally.
Without further ado, let's go straight onto your Sunday, because I'm very excited.
Needed a wee late last night, and I've got no place to go. I took a wrong turn and now I'm here. I'm pissing in a field. Pissing in a field.
Who are you opening with, John?
Opening with Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, that's strong. Yes, please. I love them. So is what kind of vibes are you getting from Simon and Garfunkel?
Well, I got really into them when I was about sort of 14, 15, and I just think they're. I weirdly think they're underrated in a mad way.
Yeah.
You don't hear about them as much as you used to.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, they're sort of super megastars. But
Yeah.
I just think they're so much better than their greatest hits, and their greatest hits is superb.
That's a great way to phrase it as well, and also a really lovely way to start your Sunday, because Sunday's the hardest day to pitch for, because Saturday is a lot of big hitters and it's kind of like a lot of the main events. But with Sunday, people are thinking about going home, but there's also a magical warmth there, and Simon and Garfunkel are absolutely they are making sure everyone stay.
They're perfect for a clearing. Mm-hmm. So after them, we've got Captain Beefheart.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Circa 74. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the Magic Band twice, and they were phenomenal both times. But I think to have seen Beefheart, I think of all the bands I've got here, Beefheart is up there with the one I would be most excited to see.
And why is that? Why particularly Captain Beefheart?
Just because I think he's unlike any other artist. Is capable of such sort of confusing angular music, and then can turn on a sixpence to write a beautiful, beautiful melodic love song. Mm-hmm. I think it's such a shame he stopped making music when he did, but he was ill for quite a few years in later life, and retreated to his trailer with his wife and painted and just painted and painted and painted. And he's a fantastic artist, but I'd love to have seen him sort of mid-70s. Apparently John Peel introduced him on stage in London and just couldn't get through it and just started crying.
Oh,
because he loved him so much.
Yeah. And Captain Beefheart, it's as you say, it has such wondrous elements. I can't say I know all the albums, but certainly I've listened to like Clear Spot and it's some like the. I think I have like a very greatest hits landscape view of him, and some of the songs are so wondrous and kind of like I think is it Observatory Crest and things like that. It's such a
I love that. I mean, that's off an album called Blue Jeans and Moonbeams that sort of Beefheart fans don't really like, but I really like that album. And there's a song in it called Further Than We've Gone, which is one of my all-time favourite guitar solos.
Absolutely. And yeah, so after Captain Beefheart, circa 74.
Well, he sticks around because he's followed by Frank Zappa, and they're going to play some tracks from the Bongo Fury tour.
Yes, but wow, that's very specific there. But Frank Zappa, yeah, and the first time he's appeared on Castival as well.
What?
Yes, I know, right?
What thick idiots have you had on this godforsaken podcast? What, no one's picked Frank Zappa?
No.
What? Do you know who the only person to pick Frank Zappa for Desert Island Discs is?
Who?
Martin Clunes. My opinion of Martin Clunes went into space. And then, the next day, I went to see Dweezil Zappa at the Royal Festival Hall.
Yeah.
Who introduced him on stage? Clunes again. Clunesy.
Yeah.
What an absolute ledge. And Martin Clunes, not only did he pick Frank Zappa for Desert Island Discs, he said, they said, would you have a luxury? And he said, all I would want is all of Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
What a guy. So the problem with Zappa is which bands do you pick which assembled band of his would be playing. Mm-hmm. So I want a mixture of the apostrophe era band, which is 74. So that's people like Napoleon Murphy Brock, Bruce Fowler, John Luke Ponty on violin, Ruth Underwood on percussion, George Duke, Tom Fowler. But then I also want some people from the best live outfit, I think, is Roxy and Elsewhere, that album. So we need Don Preston, Tom Fowler, Chester Thompson. Ruth Underwood's also in that band. So we need to sort of merge bands a bit. And I also need some people off the Bongo Fury band. So I need Terry Bozzio on drums. So it's going to be quite packed.
Tell you what, that car park's going to be rammed, mate. Absolutely rammed.
Yeah, Ramo Kablamo. But if I could see Zappa play sort of a hybrid of Bongo Fury, Roxy and Elsewhere, apostrophe, Waka Jawaka and the Grand Wazoo, that's my favourite period of Zappa, is 70 to 75.
Wonderful. And I love Frank Zappa so much, and as I say, I definitely do not have as deep as knowledge as you, but yeah, the again, I kind of have like as Daisy says, a musical bank just ready to kind of like chip into an album when ready as well. But there's some wonderful albums there, and they keep on being released as well. Like there's so many posthumous albums. So after Beefheart, Zappa, and all other iterations of that band, who do you have on your Sunday?
Well, there's a frosty atmosphere on stage because he famously didn't like Frank Zappa. So next up it's Lou Reed.
Oh,
solo.
Really? I didn't know they didn't like each other.
He once described Frank Zappa as the least talented musician he'd ever heard in his entire life. Which is so untrue it could only have been said by Lou Reed.
Yeah.
They shared residency, I think, at Fillmore East. So Zappa had a residency at the Fillmore East in 1970, and it would have been around the time that the Velvet Underground were playing their final gigs. And I imagine that he went along and watched the Mothers at the Fillmore and thought, this is a bunch of crap. Amazingly, there aren't two bands with a more sort of similar, I guess, message than the Velvet Underground and Frank Zappa, but in such totally different ways. The Velvet Underground, John Cale aside, were not technically that gifted as musicians. So to describe Frank Zappa as being the least talented musician ever seen is insane. But I was so lucky to see Lou Reed twice on his final tour. Well, he did a tour of Berlin, but on his sort of final album touring tour in 2000. So I saw him at the Colston Hall in Bristol and the Royal Albert Hall in London, and he was just such a huge figure for me as a teenager, especially. So to see Lou Reed,
and maybe Zappa and Lou, just for your festival, kind of like reconcile the differences and kind
Well, Lou Reed did apologise bizarrely, he was chosen to induct Frank Zappa into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after Frank had died. And I think Frank's daughter, Moon Unit, said, what an offensive choice for someone who's basically slagged off my dad to induct him into the Hall of Fame. But I think in later life, Lou Reed perhaps realised an awful lot of what he'd said at an awful lot of times was kind of pretty crazy. But
either way, they should have got Clunes on the job. He's fantastic. He's
Clunesy. Clunes could maybe have brokered some kind of deal. But I would be happy with any era Lou Reed, because there's no real bum notes in Lou Reed's Back Cat.
Well,
a lot of fretless bass knocking around, it has to be said, for the latter half of his career, but a genius.
And so, how many acts left have you got for your Sunday?
Two more.
Because this, I gotta be honest, John, this is ramping up for me. This is we're gear shifting hard, and it's very tense over here at Hoss Towers. But take it home.
At this point, we allow the clearing to go up to capacity.
Yes.
So another 2,500 people are allowed in. And the penultimate act of the festival is Elton John.
Oh, hello, yeah. What more needs to be said about Elton John? An absolute legend, and I can imagine for a penultimate act of a festival, you would imagine him headlining, but penultimate, wow, in for a treat.
In for a real treat. I obviously sort of knew Elton's hits, but I really only knew him through the Queen world. So there's lots of artists that I just know because they've somehow crossed paths with Queen at some point. So I knew him from the tribute concert, and I knew him from photos of him and Freddie, and I knew him because they had the same agent and they had the same lawyer, and they used to share a studio in the early 70s. Queen would record their first album on Elton's sort of dark time when he wasn't in the studio. So I knew him as sort of helping Queen in the early days, but I just thought, why the hell haven't you listened to any Elton John properly? So I bought 6 or 7 of his albums, and I can confirm he's a superb song maker.
Yeah,
because you've got to remember that Bernie as well, we have to mention that Bernie Taupin is the lyricist, but crikey Moses, what a pair.
Absolutely. And
Border Song and Grey Seal and Someone Saved My Life Tonight. I'm listening to Someone Saved My Life Tonight at 37 years old, thinking, how have you not been obsessed with this song for 20 years? It's so good.
Yeah. I can imagine it as the sun was setting, and it's quite magical. Having Elton John play, it sets the mood for the headliner as well. And take it home.
Well, have a guess.
I couldn't. I have no idea in the world. It could be. Shall we say Queen?
Yeah, it's definitely Queen.
Yeah,
it's Queen and Adam Lambert. No, it's not. It's Queen.
You genuinely had me on tender hooks then. I was like, really?
It's Queen closing out the festival to a mere 5,000 people. I sort of ummed and ahed about this because, even though I don't like big crowds, you kind of want. So I'm hoping that loads of people have just jumped over the fence by this point, or are even just in the car park. So maybe they've opened up the car park and people are seeing them from there. But I see it as a bit of the free gig they did at Hyde Park, maybe. So impossible to pick an era.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with any era. I would actually quite like to hear some songs from the last 3 albums that obviously never got played live.
Absolutely. And obviously a lot of people know Queen's greatest hits, and obviously fans of John will certainly know the back catalogues of Queen. But yeah, to have the opportunity to see stuff from Innuendo being played, and and even a few of the more intimate tracks from Made in Heaven would be really fantastical to watch as well. And yeah,
I mean, it's sort of a fantasy you can't have because because of the circumstances in which those albums were made. But I wouldn't specify any periods, just anything. I would take anything they wanted to play in any form, and I would just be. I think I would just be all completely speechless and awestruck, and I would just stand very still for a very long time.
And how long would you like them to play for as well? And
6 months. Just a really classic, tight 6-month long set. But I think they're such a generous band to their fans, and like so much is made about like what a great showman Freddie was. But what it is it's care from all of them. It's wanting to put on a show. It's wanting every single person there to feel involved and to give them 2, 3, 4,000% more than they were expecting. And I know a lot of people sort of take against Queen for various reasons, but I don't think there's ever been a band who has cared more about their audience's experience of consuming their music, whether it's the insane lengths they went to get albums recorded the right way, whether it's the places they went on tour that no one didn't make them any money.
Yeah.
You know, going
South
on tour
America.
through South America in the early 80s as a rock band, they lost money on every single tour apart from their last one because it was just logistically such a nightmare.
And also, like, in terms of, it's not a massive moment, but like in the live show, Hungarian Rhapsody, the live album, live in Budapest '86, he does is it the national anthem, and it's just this very tender moment, and it just even though there's a stadium of people, it feels like everyone is there, and it just feels like a very special moment.
Well, there's footage of him trying to learn it, and he's written it on his hand, and he's in the sort of apartment before going. I mean, I know the tune from footage of Freddie Mercury, practicing it, and he begins to sing it, and everyone just goes ballistic. And I mean, no bands hadn't really played in the Eastern Bloc that much. In Japan, he would sing in Japanese. They wrote a song, Teo Toreate. Teo Toreate Danama Maiko Ai Suruhi Toyo. And they were like bigger than the Beatles in Japan.
Yeah.
He Love of My Life, which was number one in Spain for like 1,000 years. On the South America tour, the footage of Freddie singing Love of My Life and the audience singing it back to him, just no other band has ever got close to anything like that. In terms of, I mean, there's no blueprint for what they were doing in terms of crowd work, basically.
Well, John, I think honestly, like I'm a massive Queen nerd, and we could definitely talk about Queen all day, and we might have to bring you back on a separate podcast just to do that as well. But what a remarkable festival, and there were I know you are a massive fan of Queen, but I genuinely don't think there's any other band that could really finish off a festival like Queen as well. I feel like they are the final stamp on any festival and can rock it to the ground as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your festival before we move to the final part?
No, I think that's me done. Thank you very much.
All right.
Pleased with that festival.
Yeah, absolutely. And not a single litter in sight.
No.
All right, let's head to the final part of the podcast called Floor Fillers. Floor fillers, as with event management, things are bound to go wrong. So here's a couple of hypothetical questions that John has to deal with in a manner that he sees fit. As a special treat, our live audience over Zoom has submitted some of their own floor fillers for John to answer. So let's start off with I'll give you a nice. Let's start off with this. Neko Case and Bonnie Prince Billy hate each other's guts. They say they won't perform if the other band will be performing, the other artist will be performing. Who would you pick after the two, or would you try and negotiate?
I'd move Bonnie Prince Billy to the Friday, sorry, and I would move Cass McCombs. No, I'd move Car Seat Headrest to the Saturday, because I think Neko Case would get on with Car Seat Headrest, and I think Bonnie Prince Billy, well, he actually recorded an EP with Jason Molina under the name The Amalgamated Sons of Rest, which, not fun fact, depressing fact, was recorded over September the 11th.
Okay,
and they wrote a song on 9/11 that wasn't put on the EP but is available on YouTube. That's Jason Molina, Bonnie Prince Billy, and I think Alistair Roberts, The Amalgamated Sons of Rest. So I could move him across, but there's no chance in hell that they wouldn't get on, because they're going to be best friends and release 10 albums together.
Obviously, yeah. And they can do that in a time which Queen are playing for 6 months as well. So here's some of the audience-submitted floor fillers. Van Morrison goes rogue when he gets on and just won't play ball, playing 12-bar blues over and over. How do you deal with him?
I get on stage and say, well, sod off then. I'll just have more of the band and Bob Dylan, just sod off, because no one is making you do this.
Yeah.
And your tickets are like 70 quid. So he does these weird gigs where it's like 250 quid a ticket in quite sort of intimate venues in Ireland. And I just think, if you hate playing live so much, I mean, what's his net worth? Let's have a look.
You're going to Google right now. Yeah.
What's Van Morrison's net worth? So ballpark figure, $90 million. So if you don't want to play Western Burt Arboretum, which you clearly didn't when I saw you there, just don't do it, because maximum for that gig, he's probably making, let's try and work it out, was 10,000 times a million. So he's on probably 40% of gross, maybe 300 grand for one of those gigs, maybe a bit less. Maybe 200 grand. So if you've got mug it off. If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Alternatively, I would also suggest drinking a lot of cider and getting on stage and then having a mad rant as well. Either of those is fine. But second floor filler is security tells you that Roger Taylor has been dropping litter all over the place and refusing to stop. What do you do with that?
Roger has full litter rights, I'm afraid. Roger can drop litter anywhere he wants. He could actually bring litter to the site from his house. If he was going to miss the recycling day, he could actually bring it in the back of his Range Rover Evoque, which I know for a fact he owns, and he could just dump it on site, and that's fine. I'll vouch for Roger, and I'll pick up all his litter and take it home. I'll collect Roger's rubbish.
Imagine when you get home after that festival. Your partner's like, "What's that funny smell? And why is that?"
It's just Roger's refuse. It's just Roger Taylor's refuse. I'm just going to house it for a while and look at it.
You know how Scrooge McDuck dives into a big pile of coins? I feel like you could dive into Roger's refuse as well.
But he's got a lot of Nespresso pods in his refuse. I see Roger as a big Nespresso guy.
That's a very good floor filler. Okay, number 3, penultimate question. The delivery of ales don't arrive in time for Friday night. What do you do?
Well, I believe we're just an hour's walk from Reading Services, so we basically form a human chain between Reading Services, which I believe has an M&S, and we just basically empty Reading Service M&S of all its ales, and we take them back. I mean, we can just drive there. We can drive to M&S at Reading Services.
Make space for Roger's refuse in the back, please. Finally, oh no, Queen have cancelled last minute. Who do you get to replace them?
Good question.
I feel this is a bit of a cruel question to ask.
Well, no, because I've got some of the people I crossed out. Mm-hmm. it would have to, if you're going to stand on stage and say Queen have cancelled, but we've got X.
Yeah.
There are very few people that make the crowd going to go, oh, okay, great. Mm. I think it would probably have to be... It would have to be either Bowie or Elvis.
Yeah, and Zoe in the chat says Bowie, and yeah, I think they're both two similar vibes as well, like two like fundamental legends. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Beatles maybe. I'm not such a huge Beatles guy, but I think those are probably three bands that if you said sorry Queen have cancelled, but we've got the Beatles, Bowie, or Elvis, or Jimi Hendrix. Mm-hmm. Ooh, he's nicer than my wife. I'd possibly go Hendrix if Queen cancelled.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Well, that's the end of Floor Fillers, and that's the end of this live podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, John. It's been an absolute treat, and thank you for doing this wonderful episode as well. Where can people find you online, and can you plug everything that you have to offer?
I have absolutely nothing to offer, and there's no need to find me anywhere.
Okay.
Just let me drift off into the sea.
But at least you got your Queen jacket on, that's fine. But, please check out his BBC 5 live show. It's one of the best regular pieces of audio content out there. It's really remarkable, and the back catalogue of podcasts that John does is absolutely fundamental listening. So please go and check that out. And but thank you all for listening tonight. I hope you really enjoyed this live special. It's been great to have you here. Please support Castival. There are loads of wonderful episodes in our back catalogue. Please check them out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please follow us at Castival Podcast and follow me, Matt Hart's Comedy, on Twitter. And remember to give us a 5-star rating online. Please, for a final time, feel free to unmute your microphones and give a massive round of applause to the wonderful, legendary John Robbins.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.